Chicago winters are merciless. The snow that blankets the city is both beautiful and harsh, constricting Carol Hammond's heart. Snowy days reminded her of the last day she saw her 5-year-old daughter Emma. "Carol, the deadline is tomorrow, right?" A voice called from the center of the office. As a creative director at an advertising agency, Carol's life was always a battle with deadlines. Presentation materials for a new client were scattered across her desk, and she sighed as she looked at the clock. Another late night ahead. "Yes, I'll finish it tonight," she replied. Carol gazed out the window. The falling snow reminded her of the nightmare from 10 years ago. That day, snow had fallen just like this. The day Emma disappeared at a shopping mall while Carol was away on a business trip. "I only took my eyes off her for a moment," her parents had said. Her phone rang, displaying "Beth" on the screen. A call from her sister. Carol hesitated for a moment before answering. "Are you done with work yet?" Her sister's voice had its usual gentleness. "Not yet. I have a deadline." "Did something happen?" "No, nothing special. Just wondering if you're ready for this weekend at Martha's house." Grandmother Martha's death had been a huge shock to the entire family. She had always been the family's centerpiece. And now, according to her will, Carol was tasked with sorting through the old house. "Yes, I took Friday off. Are Mom and Dad coming too?" "Of course. We'll need everyone's help to sort through that big house." After hanging up, Carol took out a photograph from her drawer. It showed 5-year-old Emma smiling. Her golden hair and sky-blue eyes resembled her ex-husband, not Carol. The divorce had been painful, but she believed she could overcome anything with Emma by her side. When Emma was 2, Carol and her ex-husband divorced. Since then, she had worked hard to raise her daughter as a single mother while building her career. She was quite different from her sister Beth. Carol had been popular with men, married, and had a child, while Beth had been unlucky in love and remained single. Having finished work, Carol drove home on snow-covered roads. As the city lights flickered, her mind drifted back to 10 years ago. It had been an important business trip. A major contract was at stake. She had left Emma with her parents. "When you come back, take me to Disneyland," Emma had said. "I promise, Emma. We'll go as soon as I get back." On the second day, the phone rang. "Carol, something terrible has happened." "Emma." Her mother's tearful voice. "What happened?" "While shopping at the mall. I only took my eyes off her for a moment. Emma disappeared." Arriving home, Carol sat on the living room sofa and reached for a glass of wine. Even after 10 years, Emma's room remained untouched. Every year on her birthday, she would cut a cake in front of her photo and celebrate alone. The next morning, Carol began preparing for her time off. Sorting through her grandmother's house would be a big job. But it was also an opportunity for the whole family to gather after a long time. Her relationship with her parents and Beth had become strained since Emma's disappearance. Especially with her parents, there was an unspoken divide. "We must move forward," they would say, but for Carol, time had stopped 10 years ago. As she packed clothes into her suitcase, Carol remembered her grandmother's house. The large old house she often visited as a child. A place Emma had loved too. Especially the guest room on the second floor that Emma had called, just like a princess's room. Carol placed a photo frame in her bag last. A picture of Emma smiling. "I'm going now," she whispered softly to the photo. 10 years ago, on the morning she was heading to an important advertising presentation in Seattle, Carol had dropped an excited Emma off at her parents' house. Emma, who had just turned 5, was already accustomed to her mother's business trips, but this time would be a longer separation of 4 days. "Mom, when you come back, take me to Disneyland," Emma said, shaking her golden hair. Her blue eyes sparkled with hope. I promise, Emma. We'll go as soon as I get back, Carol smiled and promised. Don't give her too much soda, even if she asks, Carol cautioned her parents. And bedtime is at 7. Don't worry, her father Robert laughed. We're veterans at child rearing. Don't worry. We'll have a good time, won't we, Emma? Her mother Judith said, embracing Emma. Carol left for her trip with peace of mind. Her parents were retired teachers and former nurses, and Emma loved being with them. Her father Robert tended to spoil Emma, but Carol found that heartwarming. The first day of the presentation in Seattle was successful.
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too, link below if you're curious.
The client showed interest in Carol's ideas and looked forward to working out the details on the second day. After a video call with Emma from her hotel room, just as she was beginning preparations for the next day, her phone rang. It was from her parents' home. Carol, her mother's voice was trembling. Something terrible has happened. Emma. What happened? Carol's heart nearly stopped. While shopping at the mall. I only took my eyes off her for a moment. Emma disappeared, her mother said, crying. The room seemed to spin. Carol sat down on the bed. Why? How? When? She fired off questions one after another. She was in the toys section, her father took over the phone. While I was making a payment, Judith was beside Emma. But when she looked away for a moment to take something from her handbag, Carol immediately cut short her trip and returned to Chicago. The police had already begun their investigation. Mall security cameras had captured Emma walking with her parents, but she disappeared near the toy section. Isn't there any suspicious person on the security cameras? Carol asked the detective. Unfortunately, there was a blind spot in that area, the detective replied apologetically. But we're investigating with all our resources. Carol's parents and sister Beth were waiting when she returned home. Beth had taken time off work to be there. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I'm so sorry, Carol, her mother repeatedly cried. It was just for a moment. Why did you take your eyes off her? Carol was distraught. I trusted you. Emma wanted to see some toys. Her father answered. As if she'd seen something someone was showing her, she suddenly ran to the back of the toys section. Beth quietly placed her hand on Carol's shoulder. Stay calm. Let's all search for Emma together. Despite thorough police investigations, Emma remained missing. The case was investigated as a kidnapping, but there were no ransom demands and no definitive leads were found. Months after Emma's disappearance, Carol was overcome with a deep sense of loss. She couldn't focus on work and began relying on alcohol. Her apartment was in disarray, but Emma's room remained untouched like a sanctuary. Beth diligently put up posters and continued search efforts in the community. I won't give up until we find her, Carol. Until she comes back, she said. Between her work at the library, Beth constantly tried to spread information about Emma. Meanwhile, her parents gradually became silent. Especially her mother Judith, who was consumed by guilt and fell into depression. We must move forward, her father began to say. While Carol felt irritated by this attitude, she gradually had to accept reality. With encouragement from her boss, Carol eventually returned to work bit by bit. Her creative job kept her anchored to reality. And with time, she learned to live with Emma's disappearance. 10 years passed. Carol achieved success in her work and became a highly regarded director in the advertising industry. While she appeared strong on the outside, something was always missing inside. Every year on Emma's birthday, she would cut a cake in front of her photo and keep her room preserved. One autumn day, Carol received news of her grandmother Martha's death. According to her grandmother's will, Carol was tasked with organizing the old house. She always said you were special, her mother called after Carol spoke with the lawyer. We need to properly organize Martha's estate. But there's no rush, her father added. Take your time. Carol took time off work and planned to begin sorting through her grandmother's house with her parents and sister. It would be the first time in 10 years that the whole family gathered. On the first night together, a strange tension hung over the family as they sat around the table. Carol felt that everyone was holding something back. Grandmother's house feels smaller than before, Carol said, sipping wine. But there are so many memories, Beth smiled slightly. Especially those summers when you and Emma visited, Martha was so happy. A moment of silence fell at those words. Emma's name was still something of a taboo for the family. Let's start properly cleaning up tomorrow, her mother tried to change the subject. With everyone's help, it should be quick. Carol fell asleep in the guest room on the second floor that night. When the morning sun streamed through the window, Carol slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The old wooden bed frame, the floral curtains, the faded landscape painting on the wall. Yes, Grandmother Martha's house. She sighed deeply as she rose. Sounds were already coming from downstairs. The voices of her parents and Beth, who had started their activities early in the morning. Carol hurriedly got dressed and went downstairs. Good morning, Beth turned around as she prepared coffee in the kitchen. Did you sleep well? Yes, very well, Carol lied. In fact, she had woken up several times from dreams about Emma. For today's plan, her father Robert looked up from his newspaper. Judith and I will take care of the study and living room on the first floor. Beth will handle the kitchen and cupboards. Carol. I'll look at the second floor and the attic, Carol said. I used to explore them a lot as a child. The attic is. Her mother began to say hastily, but her father interrupted with a cough. The attic is dangerous, so be careful. Some floorboards might be rotten, and there's a lot of dust. Carol felt something off about her parents' behavior but didn't dwell on it. I understand, I'll be careful. After breakfast, the family dispersed to their assigned areas. As Carol walked down the hallway on the second floor, she traced memories from her childhood. Days of playing hide-and-seek with her sister during summer breaks. The expression on Emma's face when she brought her here, eyes shining as she said, "This house is like a magic castle." The first 2 rooms were relatively easy to sort through. Old clothes, books, and used furniture, organizing and packing them into cardboard boxes. Carol pondered her grandmother's long life as she touched her belongings. Entering the third room, the former guest room, Carol paused by the window. Emma had loved the view from here. She had delighted in the forest view beyond the garden, saying it was just like a princess's room. As Carol was opening a dresser drawer, she overheard her mother and Beth speaking in hushed tones in the hallway. Is this okay? Her mother's voice was tinged with anxiety. What else can we do? Beth replied. If Carol finds out. The two stopped talking abruptly when they heard footsteps. When Carol opened the door, her mother and Beth turned around, startled. What were you talking about? Carol asked. Nothing, Beth answered quickly. This room hasn't been touched yet. I'll do it later, why don't you check the other rooms? Carol frowned. But we decided this was my responsibility, didn't we? Yes. Her mother agreed reluctantly. But the attic is really dangerous, so don't go in there. After that, Carol noticed that her family was acting strange. The 3 would often exchange glances, and stop talking when Carol approached. They especially showed unnatural reactions when she mentioned the back rooms on the second floor or the attic. At dinner, her father abruptly suggested, Carol, why don't you come with us to town tomorrow? We want to donate some old furniture. Tomorrow? But we haven't finished organizing yet. Taking a day off won't hurt, her mother said. You've been working hard. Carol silently stared at her plate. Something was being hidden here. The next morning, she watched her family prepare to go to town. "Are you sure you don't want to come?" Beth asked. "I'm sorry. I have a bit of a headache. I'll rest while you're all out." After her parents and Beth left, Carol immediately began investigating. She started by examining the back room on the second floor again. She meticulously searched for anything unusual in the walls or floor, any hidden items. But she found nothing out of the ordinary. The last place remaining was the attic. Despite her father's warning, Carol lowered the folding ladder and opened the entrance to the attic. Flashlight in hand, she carefully climbed up. "My, what dust!" she murmured. The attic was, as expected, covered in dust. Old furniture and boxes were stacked, creating outlines in the dim space. Carol carefully stepped forward. The floorboards creaked but firmly supported her weight. Shining her flashlight around, Carol explored the attic. Old trunks, Christmas decorations, childhood toys. All ordinary items. However, as she progressed further, she sensed something amiss. The attic's shape differed from what she would expect based on the house's exterior. She noticed an unnatural step in the western wall. "This wall is strange," Carol whispered. "Given the house's design, there should be space here." She approached the wall and examined its surface with her hand. It looked like an ordinary wall, but when she knocked lightly, it was clearly hollow inside. Looking closer, she found something like a small vent about 1 meter from the floor. Carol knelt and brought her eyes close to the vent. There was a latticed cover, and the other side was dark. She tried to shine her flashlight, but the angle was bad, and she could barely see inside. Carol pressed her ear to the vent. At first, she heard nothing. Only the sound of her own heartbeat broke the silence of the attic. But after a while, she began to hear a faint sound. It was humming. A soft, young voice humming a tune. A cold shiver ran down Carol's spine. The melody was familiar, a lullaby she used to sing to Emma when she was a baby. "Is someone there?" Carol asked in a trembling voice. The humming stopped, followed by silence. Carol's heart was pounding fiercely. She asked again, a little louder. "Emma? Is that you, Emma?" After a long silence, a faint voice replied. "Mom." All strength left Carol's body. The voice was unmistakably Emma's. Though changed somewhat after 10 years, she instinctively recognized her daughter's voice. "Emma. Is it really you? How did you get here?" Carol cried out through tears. With shaking hands, she tried to remove the vent cover. It didn't come off easily, but after pulling hard, it finally began to move. When she shined her flashlight, what she saw was undoubtedly Emma's face, older now. Blue eyes, golden hair. Though thin and pale, Carol's heart was certain. This was her daughter. "Emma. Is it really you? How did you get here?" Carol asked tearfully. Emma looked confused and answered, "It's the special room in Grandma's house. Aunt Beth said, wait here until Mom comes to get you." Various pieces began connecting in Carol's mind. Beth and her parents' strange behavior. Grandmother Martha's silence. The 10-year secret. Her family had been hiding her daughter. "It's okay, Emma. Mom will help you." Carol tried to make a hole in the wall. At that moment, she heard the sound of a door opening downstairs. Her family had returned. Carol quickly promised Emma, "I'll be right back," and took photos of the vent with her phone camera as evidence, and started recording. "Emma, tell me. How did you get here?" "I met Aunt Beth at the mall. She said there was a special surprise from Mom." Emma's voice continued to be recorded. Carol replaced the vent cover and crept down from the attic. As she descended the stairs, her face showed determination. The 10-year mystery was about to be solved, and the truth revealed. When she came face to face with her parents and Beth in the entrance hall, Carol put on a perfect act. "How was the shopping? Did you find anything nice?" "Yes, the town hasn't changed," Beth answered, looking a bit tense. "How about you? Is your headache better?" "Yes, it got better after I rested a bit," Carol smiled. "I'm going out for some fresh air now." Once outside, Carol walked until she reached a safe distance before taking out her phone. Her hands were shaking, but her resolve was firm. As she called the police, she looked up at the house. Inside those old walls was her daughter, lost for 10 years. Carol made an anonymous call to the police. "I may have found a kidnapped child," she calmly explained the situation and gave Martha's house address. The police promised to arrive within 2 hours. Until then, Carol had to maintain her composure and gather evidence. Returning to the house, she continued her act. "The air outside is refreshing," Carol smiled as she entered the living room. "I'll make dinner tonight." "No need, I'll do it," her mother Judith quickly said. "You must still be tired." Carol observed her parents and Beth. Beth especially looked anxious, constantly watching Carol as she moved around the house. "Carol, how are you feeling?" "You look pale," Beth asked. "Did you go to the attic?" "I told you it's dangerous," her father sharply questioned. Carol covered it up saying, "I'm just tired. Maybe I inhaled some dust this morning while cleaning the rooms." Sitting in the living room, drinking tea, Carol steered the conversation. "I often think about the day Emma disappeared," she deliberately brought up the topic. "That's in the past, Carol. We need to look forward," her mother quickly tried to change the subject. "But it's strange, isn't it? That there were no clues at all," Carol continued. "Nothing on the security cameras." "The investigation was thorough," her father said, lowering his eyes to his newspaper. "The police did their best." Beth remained silent. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed her teacup on the table. "Beth, what do you think?" Carol suddenly asked. "About what?" Beth looked up, startled. "If Emma were still alive, what kind of girl do you think she'd be?" Beth's face turned pale. "I wouldn't know. But surely a smart and kind girl." Carol checked the time. The police would arrive in an hour. She stood up, saying, "I'll rest a bit. I'll come down for dinner," and went upstairs. Entering her room on the second floor, Carol immediately closed the door and checked the recording she had made through the vent. Emma's voice was clearly recorded. And the photos were sufficient evidence. She quietly headed for the attic entrance and climbed the ladder again. This time she moved carefully and found the vent again. "Emma?" Carol called softly. "Mom? Are you back already?" "Yes, I came to help you. I called the police. They'll be here soon." "The police?" Fear mixed in Emma's voice. "But Aunt Beth said the outside world is dangerous, and this is the safest place." "Emma, listen," Carol said gently but firmly. "What Aunt Beth told you isn't true. You've been kept here. For 10 years. 10 years." Emma's voice trembled. "That long? But Aunt Beth and Grandma said you'd come to get me soon." "They lied," Carol said, fighting back tears. "But it's okay now. I'm going to get you out." Just as Carol was about to make a hole in the wall, she heard a voice calling from downstairs. "Carol? Where are you?" It was Beth. "I'll be down soon." Carol replied, quickly promising Emma, "Wait a little longer. I'll definitely come back." When she went downstairs, there were police officers standing in the living room. "Hello, Miss Hammond. We received a report." The color drained from the faces of Carol's parents and Beth. "What's happening?" her mother asked in a trembling voice. "I know where Emma is," Carol said calmly. For 10 years, you've been hiding my daughter from me. What are you talking about? Her father couldn't hide his agitation. There's a hidden room in the attic. Emma is there. The police officer checked Carol's evidence and immediately took action. We have a search warrant for the house, but if there are no objections, we'd like to check the attic right away. Please do, Carol said. Carol, calm down, Beth grabbed her arm in distress. You're tired. Maybe you're seeing things. I'm perfectly calm, Beth, Carol shook off Beth's hand. I talked to Emma too. You took her from the mall. As police officers went up to the attic, a heavy silence fell over the living room. A few minutes later, a report came through the radio, hidden room discovered. There's a girl inside. Requesting backup for evidence preservation and victim protection. Carol's parents slumped their shoulders. Beth broke down crying. I was only trying to protect Emma, she said through tears. Protect? Carol's voice shook with anger and sadness. You kidnapped her. You stole her life. The police broke through the attic wall, discovering the hidden room. At the moment Emma was rescued, Carol's emotions exploded, and she embraced her daughter tightly. Emma, now 15, was thin and pale, but her eyes shone with the joy of finding her mother. Mom, finally we meet, Emma said through tears. During the police interrogation, the truth was revealed. Beth had longed for a child for many years, but her love life wasn't going well, and her hopes of having children were fading. Her obsession with Emma gradually grew stronger, and she was jealous of her sister's success and happy family. At first, I only intended it to be for a short time, Beth confessed in the interrogation room. I wanted to teach Carol a lesson. She was always perfect and could have anything. I thought I could shower Emma with love. Mother Judith also confessed. It was painful to see Beth so sad. She always got the short end of the stick in life. But we thought it would be temporary. As time passed, it became irreversible. Carol was busy with work, Father Robert said. Emma seemed lonely. We thought Beth could be a good mother. We know we were wrong. But it was too late. Grandmother Martha was also complicit. The hidden room in her house had been used to hide moonshine during Prohibition. Martha knew of Beth's plan and cooperated. Emma was happy here, Martha supposedly told Beth just before her death. This secret must be kept. Beth and Carol's parents were arrested for kidnapping. Emma was examined at the hospital and was surprisingly physically healthy, but it was determined she had psychological trauma. For 10 years, she had been confined to a small room, isolated from the outside world. She had been given books and toys and received basic education, but it was life in a distorted reality. Carol and Emma spent the night in a hotel room, amidst the joy of reunion and the complex emotions of 10 lost years. What happens now? Emma asked anxiously. We'll start a new life together. We can take it slow, Carol answered gently. Were they bad people? Confusion lingered in Emma's eyes. No, Carol said, stroking her daughter's hair. They just loved in the wrong way, but that's not an excuse. Snow had begun to fall outside. Before returning to Chicago, Carol decided to fulfill her promise to Emma. Remember what Mom promised before I left for my trip? Emma thought for a moment and smiled faintly. Disneyland? Yes. A promise is a promise. That night, they slept holding each other for a long time. 6 months after the incident, Carol was drinking coffee on the balcony of her new apartment, gazing at the Chicago skyline. She and Emma had sold their previous home and started a new life. Mom, look! Emma burst out from the living room. In her hand was a school test paper. I got an A. Carol smiled and hugged her daughter. Emma's recovery had exceeded specialists' expectations. Of course, she still suffered from nightmares occasionally, but therapy was working, and she was gradually blending into normal teenage life. "What do you want for your birthday?" Carol asked. "Emma would turn 16 next week. I want to celebrate like everyone else. Invite friends, eat cake, just a normal birthday." Normal. That was what Emma desired most. Beth and her parents' trial had ended 3 months earlier, with Beth receiving an 8-year prison sentence and her parents each receiving 5-year suspended sentences. The lenient sentences considered their advanced age. Beth was participating in a rehabilitation program in prison, teaching other inmates to read and write. Letters from her occasionally arrived, but Carol wasn't yet ready to write back. Emma had sent Beth a letter just once. Only Emma knew its contents. That day, "Why did you go with Aunt Beth?" Carol finally asked one night. "She said it was a surprise for Mom," Emma answered, looking out the window. "She showed me Disneyland tickets. She said we would hide at Grandma's house and surprise you when you came back." Carol silently held her daughter's hand. How terrifying love becomes when it turns to hatred, she thought. Every weekend, the two had small adventures. Movies, museums, parks, sometimes short trips to nearby areas. As if trying to make up for the 10 years Emma had lost. Carol quit the advertising agency and began working from home as a freelance designer. It was to prioritize time with Emma. "This time, I'll keep my promises," she vowed to herself. As summer approached, they planned a trip to Disneyland. The time had finally come to fulfill the promise from 10 years ago. "Mom, you remembered?" Emma asked in surprise, looking at the travel itinerary. "Of course. A promise is a promise," Carol smiled. That night, Carol wrote a letter to Beth for the first time in a long while. "We are starting a new life. Emma is well. She is growing up to be strong and kind. I am teaching her what you couldn't teach her. What true love is, what a true family is." Outside the window, stars twinkled as a new night began. Carol and Emma's new life was also beginning to shine. Lost time cannot be regained. But the future was still theirs.